All right, so we're back. We did it yesterday. We did an hour and a half yesterday or something, hour and 10 minutes yesterday of making the Kimberbear. So I'm excited that you're back. If you were here yesterday, you know what we did. If you weren't, I'm going to do a brief little recap, and then you can go back and watch the other video later. And is the sound good now?
No. Oh, yep, works now. I've got some other folks that are on a little bit of a delay on getting it.
Okay.
Work, but yeah,
okay.
Good.
All right. All right. So we're going to keep going. If you we end up having sound issues, let me know. All right. Yeah, because we can try to fix that. So I'm here with my partner, Hawk. He's the one who's behind the camera, and he'll be giving me information on the sound and who's liking what and what questions you have. So, so we'll start with a little bit of recap with yesterday. We're working on the Kimberbear pattern, okay? And it is this little guy. Oh, here's my little Kimberbear, and I've got the pattern. And it's got a whole, it's 16 pages of patterns like this, okay? So if you were here yesterday, you saw the link. There's a link, kimberbell.com/Kimberbear, to download it. They've had a little bit of issue getting everybody to be able to download it because we sort of swamped them. So if you're having issues with it, you can email me and I'll send you the sewing pattern for it. And my email is Teresa, Teresa, @shannonfabrics.com. Okay, and I can email that to you after the class today, okay? So this is what we're making. Yesterday, we made the arms, the legs, and the body, okay? So we did these yesterday. As I explained, and we'll do the head the same way today. Oh yeah, this is the head pattern. Is that this is sewn. This is not the right example to use. Here we go. So the way that we do it is we sew it over the paper, okay? And we're going to do the same thing with the head today, so that what you're learning today, if you missed yesterday, you'll be able to do it. It's the same sort of technique. And like I said, we're going to post that video on Facebook. We'll post it on YouTube and Instagram and stuff too, okay? So you'll be able to access that information if you missed out yesterday. All right, also yesterday we talked about a few different things. Oh, and I want you to post about where you're from. We're going to be doing a little giveaway today. So we're going to give away another kit for making the Kimberbear, the same one that I'm making. You'll get all of the fabric and then the extras. So you'll get some thread, you'll get the extra little heart piece and the nose piece, thread to do the eyeballs, and then as well as safety eyes to do the eyes if you want to do those, okay? So tell us where you're from. And then we'll pick a winner and give you one of these, all right? So you can make your own just like mine. All right, so otherwise, yesterday we talked about a few different things that I wanted to clarify or come back to. One of them was we had talked about not how to wash and dry it, and that you want to just use cool water and a cool dryer. Don't dry it all the way in the dryer. Let it dry outside, finish drying outside of the dryer, and then you can put it back in and fluff it, and that'll work really well. I was told by a couple of people that have done it that dryer sheets are not a good idea for all of the fabric, so I don't recommend them anyway because the fabric is so soft that you don't need dryer sheets to soften it. But yeah, the recommendation is to don't use them because on some of the fabrics it will, the chemicals sort of attach to each other and makes it weird, so don't use it. The other thing was, the difference between cuddle and minky, and somebody had asked about this yesterday and I didn't really talk about it. It got mentioned in the comments, but I thought I would just clarify for you guys. Minky is a kind of fabric. So minky is just the plush fabric. It's a microfiber plush, 100% polyester knit backing fabric. It's just a type of fabric like canvas or denim, that sort of thing. Minky is the kind of fabric. Cuddle is our brand name for it, so we work really hard to have the best minky that's out there. So we have a brand for it called Cuddle. We also have Luxe Cuddle. So this is a Luxe Cuddle that we're working with today. The regular Cuddle, or Cuddle 3, is this flatter stuff. So this is, we call it flat Cuddle or regular Cuddle. Cuddle 3 is what it's called because it's a 3mm nap. So you can see it's a much shorter nap here than on the Luxe Cuddle, which is this one here. So you can see the nap is much longer on this guy. So anything that's longer than this one, we call a Luxe Cuddle, and that'll be these. Okay? So that's the difference. Minky is just a kind of fabric. Cuddle is our brand for it. And then we have Luxe Cuddle, which is a longer napped cuddle. Okay? So hopefully that clarifies that. The other one that I wanted to talk about was the dryer trick, okay? So we mentioned it yesterday. I'm going to mention it again because it's really good. And we'll talk a little bit more about cutting, but also the dryer trick is really good. So when you cut out your kids or you're cutting out stuffed animals, anything like that, when you finish cutting everything out, what I do is I wipe down my board with a wet washcloth, throw all of the scraps and everything into the dryer, let it tumble around for a few minutes on a cool dryer, no heat. You don't need the heat. You're just trying to bunk it around in the dryer a little bit, and it'll knock off all of the cuddle dust. So the cuddle dust ends up in your lint trap, and you just clean that out. So what I usually do is I let it bunk around for a minute or two. I clean out the lint trap. I let it go for another minute or two, clean out the lint trap until it stops leaving cuddle dust in there, okay? And that'll get rid of most of the mess for you so that when you're sewing it, you're not going to have the mess. You'll see today we have a little bit, but the way that I cut things keeps it down to a minimum. And then later when we have more of a mess, I just deal with it, shake it on the floor, vacuum it up. We're good. All right. So are we getting people on there? Are people there? Are you here with me? Yay. Okay, good. All right. So, let me make sure that was all that I wanted to tell you guys. Yes. Oh, and the cutter. We talked about the cutter yesterday. So let me see. I've got just a little bit of scrap here. So I'm just going to use a little. This is for the muzzle, so I'm going to show you this. Okay, so we talked yesterday about this cutter. This is the Olfa cutter that I really like. Okay, this one is an artist knife is what they call it, and you can find it in some quilt shops. They have it, especially if they've had any classes with me. They realize this is a great one. So it's sort of like a glorified box knife. Has an end that's more like an X-Acto knife, and then it has snap-off blades. So this works really, really well, and it's my preferred tool for cutting with the cuddle. Okay, and you just pop it out just a little and drag it along the back of your fabric. Works great. You just do it like this. Let's see if I can get it so you guys can see. Oh, I need to replace my blade. Okay, but it just splits it open just like this. All right, so the other thing you can use is this little guy because a lot of stores have these. Okay, so this is, it's got a little goober on it. All right, so this one is the Olfa Touch Knife, which a lot of quilt shops have. And what I found is that stores had these and they wouldn't have these, so we were trying to figure out a way to use them. What I found is that if you hold your finger on here and you hold this out and then you try to drag it along, it's kind of hard on your thumb because you're trying to push forward and pull back at the same time. So what I found is that if I push forward with my thumb here and just hold it forward, I can actually do it just fine. Okay? And it will work just the same way. All right, but the trick is to not hold your thumb on this, but to hold your thumb behind it and shove it forward. And for some reason, that takes all the strain off your thumb. Okay, so if you got one of these, you can do the same thing. The perk with this knife is that it actually just has snap-off blades, so you can keep reusing it, and you can actually buy replacement blades for these too. Okay, but if you got one of these, give it a try because it does work really well. All right, are we ready? Are people leaving their names or their city and states? Okay, good, because at the end, we'll pick a winner, and then you'll get your own little kit. All right, so let's go forward. So yesterday we did the arms, the legs, and the body, and then today we're going to do the head and the ears. All right, so first we're going to do the muzzle. All right, so what we have is our pattern here. This is my muzzle piece that I just cut up, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our, the sulky, it's the water-soluble stabilizer that I've got here, okay? And I'm going to put this on here and I'm going to trace it. And I'm going to trace all of the parts of it, okay? And I'm going to, Hawk, would you hand me a couple of those? These are my fancy weights that I got from the hardware store. And I'm just going to trace this guy out onto the back of it. Okay, if you don't have the sulky or any other water-soluble stabilizer, you can use tissue paper. Tissue paper is probably the best thing. You could probably use a foundation paper, piecing paper, a really thin one, but the water-soluble stabilizer is really the easiest for this. Okay, and I'm just going to put this on here. It's basically where it is going to be. So what I'm doing is I'm tracing this out so that I can stitch it. All right? So now I've got this, and I'm going to cut this guy. So it's not much bigger than what I need. Okay? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to put this on here. going to see if I can tell the difference with the nap. Feels like the nap is going this way, so I'm going to use that as my top to bottom. Okay, and I'm going to put this on here. I'm going to pin this in a couple of places just to keep it in check. And then we're going to come over and stitch it. Look at how fast we're sewing today. Today's a lot faster than yesterday. Yesterday it took us a little while to get to the sewing machine. Today, quick. All right, so come on over here. All right, and I will get the machine set up. So we're going to do a straight stitch. If I can get it on the right stitch. So we're going to do a straight stitch. I've got it at a 2.5 stitch length, and I'm just going to stitch around all of these pieces. So this is where we're going to flip the thread around a little bit. Okay, so we're going to use the basically matching thread. So what I have here is some from Quilter Select. It's a nice thin polyester. And I'm just going to stitch around this whole thing. And then we're going to have to switch the thread out and use the black. I'll show you when we get there. Okay. All right, so I'm just going to stitch around this right on that line. And what this does is stabilizes it so it's a little bit easier to work with. See if we can get it to go. There we go. I'm going to do that same thing that I did yesterday when I have tight curves. I'm just going to pick up my foot and move it because it's easier than trying to force it. Okay, and you can see I keep a little bit of tension on the whole thing as I'm sewing. Oops, not quite enough. Okay, so if I hold this out flat, it'll sew better. Okay, because that plasticky stuff will kind of want to curl up on it because it's got some body. Okay, so I'm just going to try to keep it in place as I'm sewing here. Okay, lift that. Okay, and the smaller your stitches around here, the more that will be able to lift up, or be able to go around the corner easier too. Okay. All right, so then I'm going to cut that, and then I'm going to go around the nose as well. Stitch that. And this one needs a lot of turning because he's got a really sharp little corner on his nose there. And we're just sort of tacking the fabrics down in place is all we're doing with this. You'll understand why when we get a little further along. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to work with this whole piece as it is for a little bit, and then that first one that we're going to use that as our cutting line later. All right, so now I've got this all the way. So now I'm going to come tackle the nose. So we're going to come back over to the sewing table. And I'm going to tackle the nose. All right, so I'm going to cut this guy out. Oops. Okay, in the pattern, they have you do it with, you're going to stuff it. I'm going to do, so they have you do that with both parts, with the muzzle and with the nose. I'm going to show you how I did it because I like doing it with just a piece of batting. I found it a little bit easier than trying to stuff it, but you can do it however you want to. That's the joy of this, is we all just get to do our own thing. Okay, so here's the shape of the nose. I'm going to figure out which way the nap is going. Okay, so if I pet it this way, it looks really nice. And then if I pet it this way, it goes wrong. That's how I know top to bottom, because if I do it this way and I do it this way, it doesn't really change. So this is the way I know is this is the top. So I want to put my piece on that way. Okay, so let me see if my little silver Sharpie will work. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I can just draw this around there. So the silver Sharpies seem to die pretty fast. It's like a thing about them. But when they work really well on the black. Okay, so if you have anything black that you're trying to draw the lines on, this silver Sharpie works really well. Okay, so there is a basic outline, and then I'm just going to cut this guy out. And I can cut this one out with my regular scissors because it's not too messy. So I cut with the Luxe Cuddle. That's when I use that blade. With regular Cuddle, it's okay. Okay, and then I'm just going to neaten this up. Okay, And I'll just take all the edges off. Basically, if I just kind of pull it, all those little loose bits of cuddle will just come right off. Okay, so you can see cuddle 3, not too messy at all. All right. Oh, I just swooped up my nose. Okay. Okay, so now I've got this guy. So what I did was I took a piece of wool batting and I stuck it on here and I cut it so that it would go just slightly smaller. Okay, just totally rough cut it because it just needs to sort of sit underneath it. I don't want it to really come to the edge. I just want it to kind of fill underneath. Okay, so now I've got a piece that has the batting on here. See, it's just a little piece. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to spray this because I want it to stick. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray the back of my cuddle. There we go. Oh yeah, this is with the 505 spray. Sorry, that's my old bottle. Here's my new one. Okay, so 505 spray is the best spray adhesive around. It doesn't smell and it washes out really nicely. Okay, so then I can just stick this on here. See that? Worked really well. And then I'm going to take it, come over here, take this guy out of his nose. Okay, which you don't have to, but I do. If I can get him to peel up there. There we go. Okay, I'm going to stick this guy right on here. Okay, so now, let's see, I'm going to spray the back of this whole thing and I can stick him on. So you can use a glue stick or you can use this 505 spray. Just took some batting with me there. All right, so there we go. So we got his nose stuck on there. All right, so now we're going to stitch his nose down. All right, and there we're going to switch the threads out, and then we're going to switch our stitches as well. So when I do it this way, I don't have to do 2 steps. Normally, when they have you do this part, what you're going to do is you're going to stitch this down, stuff it, and then do another row of stitching. And when I do it with the batting, then I just have to do 1 row of stitching. Okay, so I'm going to switch out my thread to my black thread. It's also another polyester. And again, we'll talk about the tools that we need here with our sewing machine is we need a stretch 9014 needle. Okay, so we have one from Schmetz is what I use, so the Schmetz 9014 stretch needles. And then we've got polyester thread, and we've got the dual feed on my baby lock here. Okay, so let's see if I can do this threading part. My automatic threader isn't liking me right now, so oops. So I have to try to do this by hand, which isn't as easy as it used to be. Okay, let's see. Let's pop the foot off. So if you don't have this digital dual feed, which most machines do not, I think just Baby Lock and Brother have them. Goodness, I'm having a hard time seeing that. Okay, there we go. The digital dual feed, then you'll want to have a walking foot, and that's really important because the parts that we're getting to now, it's going to become very necessary to have that to be able to get around the fabric. Okay, so now we've got that. We'll change out the bobbin too. Nice full bobbin, stick that baby in there, and then, and like I said, these are both polyesters. All right, and that's important because it gives your thread some strength when you're doing this. All right, so we're going to stick this down, and I'm just going to do a little zigzag, okay? So we're going to come over here, and I'm going to switch this around. All right, so normally when I'm doing, working with cuddle, I have a big wide zigzag, and if you've been in any of my classes, you know, we do a 5 and a 5. But we're going to do it a little bit smaller this time, mostly because we're working around something really little. Okay, so taking a nice big chunk out of it is going to make it a little harder to get around. I think I'm going to actually take it down to 2.5. Okay. Nope, there we go. Okay, so then what I want to do is get it so that it's going to run right along this edge. So if you get in here, you can see. So my needle is coming down just at the edge of the black, okay? And then when it comes over, so let me see if I can stay right there. When it comes over, it's going to pop down over here onto the fabric. Then it's going to come back over and come just off. Okay, that's the trick with it, is just getting it so that it will sit right along the edge of that fabric. Okay, so I'm going to sew this Nice and slow. Okay, so now I can see I'm getting a turn, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to lift my foot, turn it. Okay, and then I'm going to reposition it, because I can see that if I go down now, I'm going to go right off the edge. Okay, so I just reposition my zigzag so it doesn't ever come off that side. Okay. One more stitch, I think. Yeah. Okay, so then I'm going to do the same thing again. Reposition it. If your zigzag isn't perfect, it's totally fine because no one will be able to tell. Okay, actually I can see my fabric. I'm going to swish it over there with my little stiletto. Okay, so now I can guide it a little bit with the stiletto. I can see where I'm going. And I'm just going to stitch that baby down. Okay, do another little twist. Okay, and then I'm going to do a little locking stitch and take that out. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch the mouth, or the little nose dimple thing here, and the mouth. All right, so we got my nose on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and I'm going to stick that down right where it's going to come to the end of the nose. All right, so I'm going to start stitching there. Move it back just the tiniest bit. I want the needle to come down right at the beginning. Okay, so I'm going to fidget with it just a little if I can find my presser foot bar. There we go. Okay, all right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and we are going to change it to the quilting applique zigzag stitch. Okay, so I changed the settings on this to be what worked better for me, and I'm going to show you a couple different things here in just a second. So it's at a 3.5 width at a 1.4 length, so it's really nice and short. So what I did, I wanted to show you guys this. So I did it, so this is the same, this is all the same stitch width and length. Okay, this is without anything on top of it, so this is no stabilizer, no topper, no nothing. Okay, and you can see how the fabric just sort of ate the threads. Like, they're down there, but it just sort of covers it right up because it's so fluffy. So that's why we want to use some sort of a stabilizer on top. So this is the water soluble, okay, and this works really well, and it keeps it nicely on top. And this is with tissue paper. Okay, and so you can see this works as well, and both of these will tear right off, and we'll do that in just a second. But I wanted to show you the difference. So if you don't use anything, it's going to just sink into your fabric and you won't see it. So try to use something on the top of it to keep it from sinking in there too far. Okay, so I'm going to do this. We're going to just stitch this part. I'm going to lock stitch it. Okay, and then we're going to come down. Come on, little guy. Oh, it is just wider than I want it to be. What happened? Okay, let me change it. It's not wider, it's just, it's longer than I wanted it to be. Okay, so we're going to come down. I'm just going to back stitch. Well, I'm going to figure it out. Come on. It doesn't want to do what I want it to do. So I'm going to turn it. Your machine always behaves, right? Right, people? Sometimes machines don't really want to do what you want them to do. There we go. That's better. Okay. And I'm going to stitch it one more time. I'm going to shrink those stitches once more. I don't know what happened. That's super weird. Okay. Oh, you know what? Maybe I have it on the wrong one. Hold on. Oh, there we go. That's what I wanted. Hey, guys. Look at that. There's too many stitches on my machine. I can't remember which one's which. Okay, it's the decorative stitch. That's what it was that I did. Okay, so here we go. It's 4.5 and 1. That's what I did those little samples on. So let's try it again. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so now it stitches it nice and close. So this is the joy of this, is I'm just going to stitch over it all the time. Okay, so now I'm going to get to where it crosses paths with that, and I'm just going to lock it. Okay, and then I'm going to take it out. I'm going to switch it. Okay, so you can see his little nose thing here. I'm going to stick this back in and stitch along that line there. Okay, so one of the things, actually, let me pop this open. I have this foot. And I'm going to switch this out. So hold on half a second. Okay, so I'm going to pop this foot out. This is an open toe foot, and it will let you be able to see a little bit better, which is important. And it will let me see where I'm stitching a little bit better. Okay, so if you're stitching and you're having a hard time seeing, something like this is really helpful, because you can see now it's totally changed how much of my little smile I can see. Okay, so I'm going to do a little lock stitch. Oops. Okay. I'm just going to come along this whole little guy, stitch it down. Okay, and do another little lock stitch, get it secured, and then cut my thread. All right? Okay. All right. So now we've got his little face done. All right. So I'm going to trim these threads. All right. So now we've got this all, this is what it needs to be. It's all ready. And then we're going to, so I'm going to pull off this stuff. Okay. And if you've got a small stitch, it'll kind of tear along there. Okay. So it's the same as the paper yesterday's, that you got to hold a little bit of tension on it so it'll come off. What I did find is that if you do a bigger stitch, it doesn't come off as easily. So I was like, oh, I could do it faster. Oh, look at that. I barely caught it, you guys. Sometimes I get lucky. Sometimes I don't. But that one was a lucky one. Okay. So then this all just comes off. Okay? There we go. I'm going to trim that thread. You can see that. Okay, so now where this stitching line is, it's a little bit harder to see on this side, but I'm just going to turn it over, and I'm going to cut it from this side, just past that stitching line. Okay, because what we're going to do is, that's what we're going to use to applique it down, is that edge. Okay. So I'm just going to stitch right outside. So if you use a bobbin that's a different color, you'd be able to see it better, but I wanted one that, when we do the zigzagging later, I'm going to be able to see it just fine. Okay. Just cut all the way around this. You can see I'm just using little bitty cuts, and it's not gonna keep the top super fluffy like it did before, and there's a reason for that, and it's because it's already been stitched down. Okay, so you can see it catches these guys in there, but we're not going to worry about that right now. When we come back later and we zigzag over the top of this, we'll fluff it up. Okay, all right, so now we've got this, and we're gonna do its face. So let me get this, make sure. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to get the pattern for his face, which is somewhere here. All right. Oh, no. 505 spray. It stuck to it. Okay, let me see if I've got enough here. Nope. So I'm going to get myself a new piece of the Solvay so that I can trace that. Okay. Make sure I want to do this correctly. Yep. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to do this so that I'm tracing on the smooth side and that the rougher side is down toward the fabric. Okay, hold it in place here just a little bit. All right, we'll just trace all the way around. I'm going to make those marks. I'm going to put my muzzle placement here. Okay, and then it shows you, we'll do it this way, we'll do it their way on this one, okay, that these little parts, these little dots, we're not going to sew those down when we sew the muzzle on. Okay. So another thing that I found when I was doing it is that the neck opening was larger than, on the head was larger than the neck opening on the body. So I made it a little bit smaller. Okay, so I'm going to put my lines here. I won't need them quite yet, but that's the lines that I'm going to sew on. Okay? All right. So then we're going to stick that on the body. Make sure I get this all right for you guys. I don't always follow patterns super well. Sometimes I like to just make up my own stuff. Okay, so today we've got it on here. We're going to do it their way. I'm going to stick it on. I'm just going to cut this extra off because it doesn't need to be there. And I can use that for another project or another bear. Okay. All right, so I'm going to pin this on in a couple of places. Oh, I forgot to trace his eyeballs. Oh, no. We need his eyes for later, too. Where's my black? There we go. All right, let me get his eyes on there. You'll see that his eyes are a little bit cockeyed, which is kind of cute. And you can do them straight or you can do them cockeyed, however you'd like to do them. And today I'm going to do them with the little plastic eyes. All right. Okay, so now we're going to pin this on. Okay. And they just use Wonder Clips, but like I said, I like to use pins because I like to really hold it nice and stable. Okay, but you can totally just Wonder Clip that guy on there. Okay, so let's take this back over. I'm going to sew that down. Okay. I'm going to put that down. I'm going to change my stitch back because I don't need to do a big satin stitch around this. I just need to do a straight stitch. Okay, and I'm going to stitch all the way around this. Okay, and this will be my stitching line for the next round as well. Okay. I'm going to cut my thread there. And move forward and just put it down here. Oops. Okay. Cut my thread. Okay, and then I'm going to move to the muzzle and do that one. All right, so I'm actually going to start over here and do it the other direction so that I can, excuse me, so I can make sure that this stays nice and smooth. Because if I start over here, it might push this over, and I want to keep it nice and smooth. Okay, I'm just going to sew this, just bring it around this curve. So this is when to take your time with it. Okay, there's no need to really rush, and this is really just giving you a stitching line to be able to get your muzzle on. Okay, so that muzzle is a separate piece. Somebody asked me today if you could do it out of a different fabric, and you absolutely could. So if you had a coordinating cuddle that was really cute, you could absolutely stick that on there. Do it in a different color. In this one we did it exactly the same, and it'll work out just fine. Super cute. Okay, all right, so now we've got that stitched down. Excuse me, if I were going to do the eyes, as it'd be the time to do it, you can stitch them with a satin stitch, or you can do them with the little the plastic eyes, and we're going to do that. All right, so let's just move over here. I was just trying to figure out if I wanted you to come around to the other side or over here, but over here is totally fine. Okay, all right, so now we've got our little muzzle, and I'm going to rip this off in here. No real reason, I guess I just don't love them living in there. Okay, so now you can see where the muzzle's going to go. All right, so the muzzle's going to fit right on here like this, and I'm going to stitch that on, and I'm going to stitch it. So you remember there was the little dotted line that was down here. We're going to leave that open so that we can then stuff his face, which sounds odd, but that's what we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to move this down here, and I'm just going to pin this in place. All right, do we have new people? Have they left their city and states yet for us? Good, because we're going to do a giveaway at the end. If you guys have questions, is there anything popping up that I need to answer? Not so much?
Your Shannon Fabrics team is answering most of the questions.
Oh, great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Okay. Okay, so I've got my pins. I'm going to move my pins so that I know that this is where I want to start and stop, because that's where I want to stuff it. Okay. So I'm going to put 2 pins because that's my little trick for knowing my stop and start points, okay? And especially if I'm going to be having to turn something or leave a gap open for something. And this, we're just leaving it open so we can turn it. So we're just going to come back to the machine and we're going to stitch all the way around this guy, okay? Okay, so I'm going to start where I've got my double pins, okay, and I'm going to put this down. Okay, and I'm going to switch this back to a zigzag again. And I'm going to have to switch mine because I have it saved. So we're going to do a 3 1/2 and a 3 1/2 again. All right, and that's what we're going to do, our zigzag all the way around this. Okay, so I'm going to lock stitch it. Oh, wait. Decorative. What was that? No, not decorative stitch. I didn't change my thread. So I need to change my thread back because if I do my black stitch around here, it's all going to show. And we don't want that to happen. We're trying to hide our stitches. So let me change the thread back real fast. Okay, so this is the only sort of downfall there. But it's actually pretty quick. Just make sure you've got your bobbins pre-wound for yourself. Otherwise, it just takes too long. Okay, let me switch that. Okay. What did I do? There it is. I had other thread. Okay, and if you don't know, you're always supposed to clip your thread and then pull it out from the needle. Just FYI, it makes it behave better. Oh, that's the wrong one. Okay, because if you pull it backwards, it really fights against all the mechanisms that are in there. So you want to pull it down from your needle. It's just better for your machine. Okay, so I'm going to rethread this guy. You're going to watch me struggle to find the needle hole again, the eye. This one is this is from Quilter Select. Which is Alex Anderson's Notion company, and they do this thread, which is super duper thin. So you saw how easy that was for me to thread. It's super light. I don't remember what this one is. It's called Paracotton Poly. I don't see what the weight is here, but this is probably a 16. So they have some very thin ones too, but this one works really well. Okay, and so I've got my bobbin. Okay, all right. So now we can do this. Put it back in there. Guess where I was sewing before? Hey?
On the body, she left little tabs where the legs and arms are going to be sewn in. Why not do that on the head for the ears?
I will. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Yep. Right. When I get to that point of sewing it, that's exactly what I'll do. Yep. We're just not at that point of the process yet. Okay, so I'm just going to sew this. That was a great question. And thanks for coming back. Glad that there are people that wanted to do one more day with us. We're going to do it tomorrow too. So we're going to do all the head today because the head definitely, as you see, is a different process and there's a lot to it. Then tomorrow we'll be back and we'll put the whole thing together. Okay. So I'm just blind sewing. This is one of those things where you just sort of aim for where you think the edge is. If you miss it and you don't catch the edge, you can just always go back and stitch it again. And because Cuddle is just so forgivable or forgiving, then you can just go back and stitch over it twice and it's fine. So I've just zigzagged right over where it was that I stitched before, basically. Okay. And then later, we can come back and then we can just fluff this up. So that will cover up all of those stitches that we just did. Okay, and so that'll be something we do at the end. But right now, I've got a little hole down here that we're going to stuff a little. Okay. And the stuffing I've got today is the royal silk that I had from yesterday too. Okay, same stuff, royal silk. It's polyfill. It's just a nicer version of the polyfill that you've always used. Okay, it's from Fairfield, and I really, really love it. You're not going to need very much stuffing at all. This is also a place that you could use the wool batting like I did before. There's my wool batting, which is nice and fluffy. Okay, and I like that. It's easy to use, but the polyfill is also easy. The one thing you can do before you stuff anything in here is come in here with your finger and check it. Make sure that everything got caught. Okay, that's easier than trying to pull the stuffing out later. I promise. Yeah, other lessons I've learned from doing it wrong. Okay, so we're going to stuff that in there. I'm going to use my little stiletto, the little clover tool that I was using yesterday, because it's got that little rubber bit, and that's what holds kind of grabs the stuffing, and we'll move it around. So now I'm going to give his face a little bit of fluff. I'm going to put a little bit more in there. Okay, so you're just going to stuff it however much you want to stuff it. Don't stuff it too hard, because then it becomes more difficult to sew around the neck, is what I found. Okay. So we'll get that. There, he's got a little puff to his face now. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over and I'm going to finish zigzagging this around the bottom. So first I'm going to pin it a bunch, because I really want to catch that. I want it to stay where it was supposed to be. And that way when I stitch it, it'll keep that fluff and not actually just pull this part up, but it'll keep it puffy just in that little area. Okay? So I'm going to look in here. If I sew it from here to here, so this pin is my last pin. This one is going to be my first one over here. So I'm just kind of double checking the back of it to see where I did the zigzags before. That's the place I want to catch, and you can see how puffy this is now. Okay, on the front it holds down a little bit flatter, but once we get it stuffed, you'll see it'll pop up. Okay, all right, so let's sew this down. We're just going to use the zigzag again, just like we did before. Okay, so this is an area that you might have to, you know, shove it down a little bit to get it under your machine, but it'll sew through just fine once you get going. Do my little lock stitch here. And you can see I'm going over where I stitched before, just the tiniest little bit. Okay, and make sure I don't sew over my pins. I always get asked about that. I'm going to tell y'all, don't sew over your pins. Okay, it's really a bad idea. All right, zigzagging, lock stitch, cut my thread, come on out of there again. All right. Okay, so now we've got his little muzzle is sewn right on. All right, so now I'm going to stick the eyeballs in. I'm going to show you how I do those. Okay, so if you are doing it with, you can do it with just thread. I've got just some pearl cotton that I had from before. It's like it's 8. And so I did this, and I did it with, I think I did 2 strands. Where's my purple guy? Here he is. Okay, I did 2 strands, and then I just stitched over a bit. But it's the same thing here, where like his little fur kind of hides his eyeballs. Oh, there's a little bit of plastic left in there. So this is what I did, and I just sort of stitched in a little bit of a circle. I tried. Okay, hand embroidery is not really my thing, but you know, it worked out okay. I like the little plastic guys, and maybe just because I've used them so much. I'm also not giving this to anybody who's going to eat it. So if you are giving it to a little, then you need to make sure that you're taking the right precautions. And like I said, you could use buttons, but make sure that you use one that has 4 holes and not a shank. They're too easy to pull off and eat. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm trying to stab my scissors through here to make a little bit of a hole. Okay, and I'm just leaving the plastic on there, the stabilizer, so I can see where it's supposed to go. And then I'm going to shove this through until it kind of pops through there. I can see the hole. There we go. So I make it so it's nice and tight. Okay, so it's not as likely to fall out. The knit fabric isn't going to want to obviously tear at all. Okay, so I can push this down. There we go. Get him in there, and then I stick this on the back. Excuse me. So then I'm going to just push this down until it locks. Okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other eye. So there's his one little eye. See? So cute. Okay, so I'm going to snip this, stick my little scissors in there, kind of wiggle a hole, and stick this eye in.
Do you get safety eyes part?
You can get safety eyes from lots of different places. A lot of quilt shops have them now because stuffed animals have become a little bit more popular for people to make. So ask your local quilt shop if they've got them. Otherwise, there are a few online places that sell them, online fabric stores that sell them. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you any in particular that offer them. I remember the fabric shop in Ruston had them, but that's a shop in Ruston, Louisiana. If you want to call them, I know they had them. So there you go. There's his little eyeballs. Okay? Super duper cute. I love the little eyes. They just add so much to it. Okay, so now we're going to put it together with the two faces together and then the ears, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to get our pattern. Yep, come on around. Okay, so he'll come around to the front. And we'll put this whole thing together, all right? So the way that it's done is they have the pattern put on here like this. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put these together. I'm going to sew from this side following my already made marks. Does that make sense? Okay, so it's easier for me if I do it that way. So I'm going to mark this. So I've got my ears. Got my ears pretty well done. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come under here with my pen. I'm going to find which, oh, never mind, I got a ruler. Okay, so I'm going to look and just see how big I made this guy. So I made his neck hole 1 3/4 inches is what I changed it to. Okay, so I'm just going to mark spaces on here. So this is how I'll know where to leave those marks, okay? And I want to do the same thing for his ears. I just want to make sure that I'm not just completely eyeballing it, because honestly, they need to all fit in there together. Okay, so there's 2 inches. And the ears are the same. I'm going to say that and be like, the ears should be exactly the same, but I should measure it just to be sure. Oh yeah, 1.5 inches, 1.5 inches. Okay, so that's where it is. So I'm going to do the same thing that I did yesterday. Somebody mentioned this, where I'm going to sew these little bits out. Okay, and I'm sewing a 1/2 inch seam allowance from this edge that I'll cut it a 1/2 inch from that seam. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to sew here to here and then around here, and basically sewing on this line that I already sewed. Okay, and that way I can catch them, and then we'll come back and we'll do the ears. All right. So let me pin that really well, and I'm going to try to smash it out as flat as possible so we're getting accurate stitching on it. All right, we can take that plastic stuff off when we're all done. Water soluble stabilizer. I call it plastic stuff, but it really does have a name. All right, pull this out, get it nice and flat. Stitch it. So like I said, you can use Wonder Clips, but I really prefer pins. Just are a little bit easier for me. The only thing is you need to make sure that you're not sewing over them, but also you try not to poke yourself too much. All right, so let's come back over, and this is going to be a whole lot of back and forth of the sewing, because we're going to have to do those the little L's all over the place. There's a bunch of them on this one. All right, so I'm going to start over here. I'm going to repin this so that my head's over there. Make sure I'm going to switch this again. So we're going to switch our straight to a straight stitch. All right, and we've got it at a 2.5. Okay, because we want it to hold pretty well. And I'm going to leave this foot on here. If it becomes an issue, because the difference between the 2 feet is that this one will hold down a little bit more fabric. So sometimes this is easier to use because it will push more fabric down while I'm sewing. And then this one lets me see more. So it's sort of which one ever works better for the moment. All right. And I'm also going to grab my stiletto so that I can shove things around a little bit better.
There was a question about the stiletto. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so this is the stiletto from by Annie. It's my favorite. It has this really nice point to it, so that means I can grab the fabric and I can move it around as much as I want. It also has a, it's been sandblasted so that this has a little bit of grab, so it isn't slick like some of the other ones. I really like it, and it's a really good handhold. So you'll notice I have it in my hand a lot when I'm sewing with it, because if I need to use it, it's really handy for that. So for this, I'll be able to like push this down and sew over it, and it lets me have another hand or little finger that will get closer to the needle without actually sewing my finger. So that's what I'm attempting to do. Okay, so I'm going to put the needle down, take my pin out, and, stitch, back stitch a little, and then I'm going to get up to where that is. So now I'm right on that stitching line. Okay, I'm going to pop my needle up, I'm going to turn it, see if we can do, okay, there we go. We'll do a little revision on how we're holding cameras. Okay, there we go. All right, so now I'm just going to push this and come all the way around. I'm going to keep that so that it's going to stitch right along that edge, basically just inside, so that the black doesn't have any chance of showing once I turn it around. If you miss it and you get a little bit on the other side, it's totally fine. Okay, so we're just going to come stitch right around here, and I'm going to turn and go off. Okay, and I can feel that in the back, that digital dual feed is like, wait, what are you doing? This is too thick. But it's going to manage because I'll just shove it under there and make it work through. But you might have to work with your fabric just a little bit because it's got that extra puff. Okay, so same thing. We're going to come around here. It's about a 1/2 inch out that it needs to go. And sew up to there. Do a little pivot. Keep on going. So this, I can just hold this, and I like it because I can actually stab through both layers and keep it where I want it to be. And really guide it pretty easily. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing. So these are the ear holes, basically, that we're going to pop the ears in when we get there. So this is where it's like, oh wait, what are you doing? I'm going to have to manipulate it. Make it do what I want it to do. Okay. Okay, all right, and over here again. Okay, and if you were with us yesterday, you saw how it makes it sort of pop in when I do this. If you weren't, it's seriously one of my favorite little tricks in sewing for when I ever have to do things where I have to turn a seam inside and stitch it, because it really does keep it where you want it to be. Okay, so this is where it's going to get a little bit funky because this is real puffy. You see, this doesn't necessarily want to go underneath the foot. So I'm going to hold this down and try to work it through. Okay, just take it nice and slow. Help my machine just a little bit to feed it through, but I'm not pulling it or pushing it too much, okay? All right, so then I'm going to turn it one more time. Try to get this under there. Okay, stitch right out. Oops, and then I'm going to back stitch. Oops, hit the wrong button. Okay, lock it there, and then cut my thread. All right, so there we've gotten it stitched all the way around. You can see it on this side. So here we've got, here's the neck hole. So if I turn it like this, it'll make a little bit more sense. Here's the neck hole, here's the ear holes, okay? Stitch all the way around. So now we're going to come over and we're going to do the ears the same way we did yesterday on the paper. All right, so let's do that. You can just stay this side with me. And I'm just going to cut these apart because I don't need it with the head on there now. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing, and I'm going to do it from this side because this side is visually distracting for me, and I'm, you know, those things are important to me. So I'm going to do it from here. You could always cut this off first if you want to. I'm going to leave it on there and just put these guys on. Okay. So I'm going to pin this on. And the reason, if you weren't here yesterday, you'll see this makes it a little bit easier to sew. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to do the stitch, do it around, and get that in there. What we're going to do after is I'm actually going to clip this and make those come out so that they slide in. Okay, works pretty well. So we're going to go over and stitch these down just the same way we did yesterday. Okay, and like I said, you're welcome to chop that off. We're not going to do it quite yet. Okay, let's start here. All right. It doesn't want to move forward very well. There we go. Okay, and you can hear that sound. That is just it coming through the paper. Okay. And it like kind of chops through the paper and sounds odd, but that's what it is. It's just the paper because it's stabbing through it. So you can imagine after this project, you can make a couple of these guys, you know, and then make sure that you replace your needle because we're sewing through a bunch of polyester and paper. It's gonna dull your needle. You should be replacing needles probably more often than you do. They say every 8 hours, so It's fairly often. It keeps them nice and sharp. One thing I've noticed is if you don't replace your needles fairly often when you're sewing with Cuddle, is it'll start to snag the fabric or it will skip stitches. And that's one of the reasons actually that we use a stretch needle, is because a regular needle will totally skip stitches. So if that's an issue that you're having when you're sewing with this, make sure that you check your needle and just replace it. It's easier. They're cheap enough, and it makes a huge difference in your sewing results. Okay, all right, so we're just going to work our way around this ear. You can see I just, slow down, go a little bit faster when you can, but don't worry about going too fast. It's not a race by any stretch. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to turn just a little and come right off there. All right. There we go. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing as before. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and cut around these. Okay, so I'm going to cut around that with the rotary cutter just because it's faster, and it doesn't really matter if it's a perfectly even 1/2 inch. These are both 1/2 inch seam allowances for all of the things, but it doesn't have to be exactly 1/2 inch. Okay, 1/2 inch just makes it a little bit easier to sew, but that's about it. Okay. Let me just cut all the way around it. Okay, so the rotary cutter, as you'll notice, makes more mess than the blade did, but it also is just a lot easier to do. If you want to take your time, you can absolutely cut these out with the scissors. I'm just going to, thwack the dust onto the floor, and it'll vacuum up later. Okay, that is my MO for dealing with Cuddle, is I'll make the mess and clean it up later. It's fine. It's so soft, it's totally worth it. Okay, I'm just going to cut around this guy. Okay, so there's that one. All right, so there, and then I'm going to cut around this guy. So this one is the one I don't have any markings on, so I just have to eyeball it, but I can see this stitching okay. You could also cut it from here. Okay, well, we'll do that from here so you guys can see it a little bit better. All right, and I'm just going to cut it so that it's about 1/2 inch from that edge. Okay, doesn't have to be even or nice or anything. It's going on the inside, so really it can be pretty ugly for all we care. All right, so now we've got his little head. Do a little whack of Cuddle dust. Okay, I'll get my vacuum over here in a minute, and then we're going to turn this inside out. So it gets a little bit funky because you have these eyeballs and you have this big muzzle. So the muzzle is thick and will take a little bit to get through. So don't worry too much if it takes you a second. Okay, but once that pops through, it'll just come on out. Okay, so there's the muzzle. Look at, he's going to have a face. There he is. Look at, all of a sudden we have a little face. He's so cute. Okay, so you can see he's still got the little plastic stuff on here. So can you guys see that in here? It's a little bit odd looking. So that's what that is it's just the stabilizer is still on there. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that off. Okay. So I probably could have pulled it off before I sewed it together. Might have been easier. But I'm all for trying out new techniques. All right, so we're going to pull this off. Okay, and so then in here, oh, look, I missed a little part of him. Okay, so this is a great, you saw, I felt it, and I still got some. So this is what I can show you, is where I had my needle. Hold on, here it is. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I fix that, because you guys see that, right? The little stuffing is popping right out, even though I checked. Okay, hold on, I need to grab some thread. Why is that not giving me thread? Okay, doesn't want to work for me. There we go. All right, and grab some thread. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to thread this guy, and I'm going to do a nice big whip stitch. And I'm going to do that now because honestly it's easier to do it early. Oh goodness, I cannot see. Hello, I need the light. I may have to go put my glasses on instead of my contacts. Oh, okay, Hawk, do you want to thread the needle for me? I think I sort of did. Nope. Nobody ever struggles with this, right? Right. Okay. Such a weird angle too, because I'm not in front of it.
Got it.
Is it? See, I can't see that. It's like a really weird angle because I'm looking at it from sort of like behind. Okay. So I'm going to do a double. Thanks for putting up with me, you guys. I appreciate it. I also know that some of you understand the struggle of seeing that thread through the eye of the needle. Okay, so I've got it threaded. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to whip stitch this. So I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to stick it through. And I'm just going to kind of grab in here. I'm going to stick my finger in here because I want to make sure that I'm just getting the back fabric and not all the way through, which would be easy to do. Okay, I'm going to come up and grab this. And I'm just going to do a big whip stitch. This is actually, as much as I like things being, perfect when I sew them, this is a great little example of how easy it is to actually fix these little mistakes. So the only thing I want to do is make sure that I'm not catching the stuffing in there. Okay, and I'm going to pull this nice and tight. Just do this along here. A lot of times when I'm doing stuffies, I end up having spots that miss, and I just come back in just like this. Just do a big whip stitch. You do not have to do a nice stitch at all because it will never show. And I could sort of feel in here underneath where the stitches were because we had done that zigzag and the straight stitch before. So that's what I'm aiming for. Okay, so you can see where those stitches are in there a little bit. And I'm just trying to grab that and then come up and grab that top one as well. Okay, nice big stitches. Doesn't matter because we're going to come back over it and fluff it up. Okay, that's the joy of Luxe, is that honest to goodness, you can make all sorts of little goofs and nobody will ever be able to tell. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that my threads stay even. That's something that can happen, is that they like to get a little uneven. Okay, so I'm going to knot this. Come on. Is there a question?
Oh, they're talking about having a little tussle over who gets this bear when you're done.
Oh, I see. Got it.
2 sew as center, 1 bear leaves.
Got it. I made another one, guys. I'll share. No blood, no blood. Okay. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stab this through here. I'm going to stab it up through here so that tail gets lost underneath somewhere and it can't accidentally get pulled out. Okay, be super not safe and use my rotary cutter as the scissors there. Okay, so now that's all taken care of. I just fluff it up. It's all good to go. Nobody can tell that his face wasn't perfect. Okay, all right, so now we've got that. Now we're going to do the ears. Where did I do with them? Okay, so now we're going to turn these. What I have found is that I want this part to pop out because these are going to go into here. Okay, so when I turn it, I don't actually want this all to turn inside nicely. I want these parts to pop out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right alongside that that seam that I sewed. Okay, so I'll show you. Okay, so I'm going to tear this out. And I tore that in the wrong order, as you can tell. Okay, because the outside didn't want to come off as easily. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this just right next to there. Just right next to here, not catching any of my threads. I'm going to be careful not to catch the threads. Okay, so then when this comes out, this guy is going to be like a little tail that sticks out that I can tuck into the head. Okay, that'll make sense more in a minute. All right, so then what we do is we turn these guys inside out. Ta-da. So now you see how this sticks out and doesn't all tuck inside. Because if I left him, it would all want to tuck this direction, and I don't want that. I want these to stick out. So cutting it makes it so that works. Okay, now we can stick the tiniest bit of stuffing in there, just make it a little bit puffier. You saw I didn't trim the seam allowances at all, so it actually has some thickness to it because it has all that seam allowance in there. So you can look inside and you can see how much fluff is inside of there. So I'm just going to stick a little bit in because we don't really need very much at all. Okay, and then I'm going to shove that in real far, and then I'm going to stick a pin in up here to hold that up there. Okay, because what I want to do is I want to keep the stuffing up here until I sew it in. I want to keep that 1/2 inch seam allowance basically so I can stick this in. So we'll do the other ear and do the exact same thing. Okay, so I'm going to tear away the outside first because that's the better way of doing it. It does behave much nicer that way. Okay, I'm just going to grab it with my nail, bend it a little bit, tear the paper. Tear all of this off. Well, a lot of vacuuming to do. Got a little mess there. All right, so now I've got that. I can stretch it, pop it, it pops out. Okay, a little bit easier. There we go. I'll get rid of my little extra bits. I wanted to hang out. I'm going to do the same thing and cut right beside the stitching. Okay, not through the stitching, because if you cut through the stitching, you're going to have to go stitch it again, because you actually need those stitches in there. Okay, so I'm cutting it so it has that little tail. So this is the part that I'm going to sew. All right, I'm going to do it one more time over here. Okay, and I'm stopping just before that corner, just so that when it flips out, I don't want to cut too far in there. All right, so now I'm going to do the same thing. Flip it inside out. Shove all that stuff up in there. And we're going to do the same that we talked about yesterday, where we come back over and flip these all out. Okay, we can do that when we're all done sewing it, but that's what we're going to do, because you can see how it all gets stuck in here. Okay, all that fiber, and if you just want to pull it out, it'll make all the difference in your final project. Okay, so I'm not going to worry about it too much right now, but we'll do it at the end. I just want to remind you that's what we're going to do. Okay, so then I'm going to stuff it with just a little bit of stuffing. Fill up that middle part of the ear. Okay, try to get them equal between the ears so they're about the same stuffed. Okay, and then I'm going to pin this. All right, so now what we're going to do is we need to put the ears in. Okay, so when we've got those the little L things that I sewed into the seams, so this will turn in nicely at 1/2 inch. This is where a lot of this is really just done by touch, because there's so much of it that isn't really feelable. So the one thing that I think that in the pattern they tell you just to put these guys in there and sew them in. What I'm going to do first is I'm actually going to stitch across here, because for me holding them together and then trying to get them in there and then pinning them was difficult. Okay, so I'm going to go sew this on the machine real quick. I'm going to sew both the ears, just a nice straight stitch down the side there. Okay. Oh, I got to thread the machine again. Oh no, you guys, I have to thread again. We're in trouble. I really need to get my threader fixed. Okay. Bring it around, up. Okay. Okay, I'm going to come in here. Sorry. Was it having trouble focusing too? Oh good, me and the camera are doing just as well together. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stitch this down, and I'm actually going to use a big zigzag. So I'm going to go back to my normal big huge zigzag, which is a 5 and a 5, because really all I'm trying to do is smash this flat so it's a little bit easier to sew, and try to keep it together while I'm sewing it. All right. Okay, so I'm going to cut that thread, pull this guy out, and I'm going to do it again with this one. So I've got my little tails sticking out. I'm just trying to squish all of this down together so it will behave. All right, so I'm just going to stick that in, smash it, and then just zigzag it. Okay, so you can see it doesn't really want to move right now because this is really thick and it's having a hard time getting through that. So I'm actually just going to help it with my little stiletto and push it forward. You can see just that little push made it totally work. Okay, so try not to fight your fabric too much in your machine. They're trying to do the best they can, but this little stiletto is really good for helping it go where you want it to go. All right, so now I've got the ears, and I'm going to stick them in. So once I've gotten them like this, they're a little bit easier to deal with, is really my thought, is that it's, I'm not fighting with that other pin, and they're just going to stay in place, which is nice. Okay, I'm just going to get the extra cuddle fuzz off there. I guess it is cuddle dust at this point. Okay, so then I'm going to stick these guys in there. Okay, this one you're not going to be able to see it super well what I'm doing because a lot of it is just by feel. So what I'm trying to do is getting this edge and this cut edge to match inside. And I just do them one side at a time. So I'm going to get this guy in there. I'm just going to shove it until I can feel he's sort of in the right place. Okay, try to bring this around. Okay, and then I'm going to pin him. Okay, and I'm sort of just feeling both sides to make sure that the seam allowance is in there and that the roll from each side is sort of at the same place. So where it's rolled into the seam. Get rid of my needle until I need them again. Okay, so I can sort of feel both sides here that it's stuck in there. Okay, so I'm going to sew it along here. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Make sure that that's tucked nice and neatly inside. Sort of work his ear in there. And just sort of feel it until it's right. Okay, this is the same thing that if you don't get it right the first time, and I may not, but we'll just go back and we'll zigzag it again. It's totally fine. Okay, and that's why we want to use the Luxe Cuddle. So this is really, this is the time when you can tell, like if we were doing this with a regular cuddle or a cotton, you couldn't do it like this. But because it's such a nice forgiving fabric, we can totally do this and we'll never see those stitches. Okay, his ears look like they're fairly even. They might be a little cockeyed. I think he's pretty cute though. Okay, he's getting there. He's becoming a little bear. All right, so let's go over and stitch those down. All right, now I'm going to grab my stiletto again because I'm sure I'm going to need it. And what I'm doing is I'm stitching right along this edge where his ear is. You can't see it and neither can I, okay? So this is really where I'm like, okay, I can feel there's an edge here. So I'm just going to try to stitch over that and I'm going to see what happens. Okay, so put my foot down. I've got a big zigzag and I'm actually going to shrink this zigzag a little bit. I'm going to keep it wide, but I'm going to make it a little bit shorter so that it will catch a little bit more, okay, because we want it to actually hold on pretty tight. So I'm going to do it at 3 and see what happens here, okay. And do my little lock stitch, okay. I'm going to take this pin out and I'm going to stab through here where that was so that I can feel it and aim for it, okay. And I can feel this with my stiletto. I can feel where that edge is and I'm just trying to catch right along that edge, okay. If it goes a little bit deep, as long as I'm catching the ear, we'll be all right. And if not, we'll come back over it, zigzag it again. Okay, and I'm trying to be really careful to not sew over my pins. Okay, that will break your needle and they can do all sorts of bad things to your machine. Okay. Do a little lock stitch, cut my thread, take this out. Okay, and now I'm going to give his ear a tug. Okay, you can't really see how hard I'm pulling on it, but yeah, see, give it a good tug. Nothing's popping out, so I think I caught it. All right. So, but really, you can't see it. That's the crazy part. Like, even like digging in there, I can't really tell where things are. So then we're just going to come over here like this and just fluff that up, and nobody will ever be the wiser that you just zigzagged that down on top. All right, super easy. Do the same thing over here. Just fluff up all those stitches. Okay. Super great. And then we're going to take it, do the other ear exactly the same. All right. So I'm going to kind of feel for it. I can feel that that's about where the edge is. So I want to catch that. So I'm putting it, what I'm feeling is that the edge is about right here, and I want it to be about where that needle is going to come down. Okay. So that's what I'm trying to feel for. Okay, take that pin out so we don't accidentally hit it. Okay, that pin goes that direction. Feeling around here, make sure I catch everything. Okay. And if I don't, like I said, we're just going to come right back over it and catch it again. Okay, so let me give it a see. Okay. Okay. Did I see somebody was panicking about embroidery there?
There's a little thing with the embroidery instructions, and they ended up with flat ears because there wasn't they didn't get the stuffy.
Oh, so I see right here. Look, guys, you see I didn't quite catch it all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shove this like this, and I'm going to zigzag that down. Okay, and it's going to be good enough. Okay, if you want to take it out, you are always welcome to. If you've been to any of my classes, you know, I'm like, what could I hide so that I don't have to take any stitches out? Okay, all right. So there we go. We've got a couple of ears on there. They're a little bit puffy, okay, a little bit. I'm going to trim these threads, and then let's go stuff his head. Okay, so I'm going to put some of these threads that I've got hanging around here so we can get it a little bit neatened up here. Okay, I'll get his face clean. We'll do a little vacuum here. I got some crazy mess happening. Okay, so I'm going to throw this away. So one of the things with Cuddle is the more gentle you can be with it, the less it will fall. Okay, so don't just pick it up and throw it around. A lot of people want to do that, and I suggest that you do not, because you'll see every time you move, it wants to move a little bit, so just be gentle. And then vacuum a lot. Okay, so now we got that mess. So our little face. All right, so in the pattern, if I remember correctly, they have you put the head into the neck, and I want to put the body into the head. So I have it going this direction. The body will come up that way. So right now what we're going to do is we're just going to stuff his head, and then we're going to wait. So tomorrow when you come back, we're going to put the whole thing together. All right, and I'll talk about how that's going to go together, but it's basically the same sort of thing that we just did. And I'll show you a couple of other little variations on it that I have done. Okay, so do we have any questions out there? Is everybody's coming right along? Does anybody have their bear done yet? Just kidding. There's always somebody who wants to work ahead. All right, I'm gonna get some more stuffing. And like I said, this is the royal silk one. It's just another variation on the fiber fill. So this is the other kind that you're probably familiar with. It's just this polyfill. You can absolutely use it. Okay, so if you don't have the royal silk or you can't find it somewhere, it's fine. You can absolutely use this. Okay, it's just a personal preference that I really like how soft that is. So if you get a chance to find it at your local quilt shop, definitely give it a try. You'll be surprised at how much softer it is. It's really super duper nice. Okay, so there, his little head is stuffed. Okay, his nose is on, his eyes are there. At this point, I can go along, pull out all those little bits that are stuck in there. Okay, it is water soluble, so if you spray some water on it, it'll actually dissolve, which is great. Okay, and this is the time too that we can come back over here and pull up all of these fibers out of all of these seams, so that then it just hides any little blips that we have. Okay, so I can do that around his nose. Okay, I'm not going to do it too much around his mouth because I actually want it to stick down there. Okay, the biggest things I want is it to come out of any seams along like sides. So like this guy right here, where I can see it's all stuck in here. It's going to look much better when we flip that out. Okay, so if you kind of do that along the way, it's a little bit easier and less time consuming. But it's also something, you know, that you can do when you're just sitting and watching TV. It's just fluff your seams out here. Okay, and this works well for all sorts of things. I use it on all of the stuffies, of course, but as well as when you're making like self-binding blankets and that sort of thing. Okay, so do we have lots of comments? Can Michael or, someone at Shannon Fabrics is going to choose a winner for our little giveaway? Because today we're going to stop here. Okay, so right now I've got my pieces. We've got the arms and the legs stuffed. We're not going to stuff the body until we get the pieces on. Okay, but we've got arms, we've got body. I just keep finding more threads. We've got arms, legs, body, head. Okay, so we've got all of our pieces. Tomorrow we're going to come and we'll put it all together. Okay, we'll talk about some other little things that you can do with it and ways that you can use it. And I did show you this, but I wanted to show you guys really quick just the tearaway part of this. So this is with the water soluble. Okay, so this I can just tear it off, totally fine. With it, it's the same way. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that the tissue paper is going to work almost as well as the tearaway stabilizer. Okay, so if you're in a pinch and this is what you need, there you go. Okay, do we have a question? Is that what this is?
We have a winner.
Oh, we have a winner. Winner, chicken dinner. Okay. All right, some nice question. Okay. All right. Sorry, just trying to we're trying to manage all of the things, guys. Okay, so who was the winner? Lexi Smith from... It wasn't on there. No. Oh. Yeah, I didn't see it. It was miles back then. Yeah. Okay, so we have a winner. So I will be sending, today's Wednesday. So Friday I'm going to go out and go to the mail and I'll go deliver all of those packages for the kits. So we'll have one tomorrow. Oh, from Kaiser. Oh, I know where Kaiser is. I'm from Portland originally, so I totally know where that's at. Yeah, you guys used to have a really good quilt shop down there that closed a couple years ago. Yeah, Greens or... Oh, I cannot remember the name of it now. Anyway, congratulations. That's the point. Congratulations. You win a kit. I will be going out on Friday, and I will mail those all off. So yesterday we had a winner. Today we've got a winner. Tomorrow we'll have a winner too. So come back then. We'll put this together, and like I said, we'll have some more things for you. We're going to be doing more of these videos. So if you have suggestions on things you want to learn, let me know. I'm, in my house for the next while, just like you. And I'm really happy to share the information that I have and the knowledge that I've got about sewing these things with you to make it easier, because Cuddle is really amazing to sew with. There's so many things that we can make with it. So I'm happy to share all of that with you. So make sure that you're following us on Facebook and on Instagram. You can follow us on YouTube. I've got a lot of tutorials there as well that we've done about doing, like I said, the self-binding blankets and strip quilts and lots of things. So we're always wanting to do more. Is there anything else we need to follow up with? All right, so thanks so much for joining us. Tomorrow, come back with your legs, your body, your head, your arms. We'll put them all together. We'll make ourselves a cute little Kimberbear. All right, thanks so much. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.